I sat frozen as my sister Nancy looked me dead in the eyes across our family's boardroom table. "Your services are no longer required," she announced during the board meeting I helped schedule. "Clear your office by tomorrow." The room fell silent. 10 executives stared at their notepads, avoiding eye contact. Dad built this company from nothing, trusted us both to lead it, and now his eldest daughter was firing his youngest. I nodded calmly, a smile spreading across my face. I couldn't stop laughing. Next morning would be fun. My name is Kitty Patterson, 34 years old, and until yesterday, I was the Vice President of Product Development at Patterson Manufacturing. My father, William Patterson, started this company 40 years ago in our small Wisconsin town with nothing but determination and a workshop in our garage. He built it into a thriving operation that now employs 300 people and serves clients across the Midwest. I joined the company right after college, eager to be part of something meaningful. Some might call it nepotism, but I worked twice as hard as anyone else to prove I deserved my place. For 15 years, I poured my heart and soul into innovating our product line, building relationships with clients who became friends, and making sure our employees felt valued. Dad always said people were the foundation of our success, not profit margins. My sister Nancy, 5 years my senior, took a different path. After getting her MBA from Wharton, she returned with impressive credentials and an even more impressive ego. She handled the financial side of things while I focused on products and people. We had different approaches, but they complemented each other in a strange way. I connected with employees on the production floor. Nancy impressed investors in the boardroom. Dad saw value in both of us. Growing up, Nancy and I were never particularly close. She was studious and serious, always planning her next achievement, while I was the creative one who preferred getting my hands dirty. The age gap meant we rarely shared friends or interests, but we maintained a respectful relationship, united by our love for Dad and his vision for Patterson Manufacturing. Everything changed 3 months ago, when Dad suffered a massive heart attack. At 68, he was still running the company with the same enthusiasm he'd had at 28. The doctors were blunt. He needed to step back completely or risk another, potentially fatal episode. Just like that, 40 years of leadership came to an abrupt halt. Dad had always planned for both of us to take over together. Nancy has the business mind, and Kitty has the heart. Together, you make one perfect CEO, he would joke. But with his sudden health crisis, the transition happened faster than anyone anticipated, and Nancy saw an opportunity. While I spent time at the hospital with Dad, Nancy called emergency meetings with board members. She presented impressive charts showing how dual leadership created inefficiencies. She emphasized her financial expertise and subtly highlighted my lack of formal business education. By the time Dad was discharged, she had convinced most of them that Patterson Manufacturing needed a single leader, her. When Dad reluctantly agreed to the arrangement, I supported the decision publicly. For the sake of his health and the company's stability, I swallowed my disappointment and pledged to support my sister's leadership. "We're family," Dad reminded us both as Nancy moved into his office. "Remember that above all else." I tried. I really did. The first week was uncomfortable but manageable. Nancy made rapid changes, redecorating Dad's office with expensive modern furniture and scheduling back-to-back meetings that mysteriously never included me. Still, I focused on maintaining stability in my departments and reassuring nervous employees. Then came the first real shock. I was reviewing some financial projections Nancy had requested from our CFO when I noticed something buried in the spreadsheets. Plans to cut the entire custom manufacturing division, a department I had built from the ground up over the past 5 years. A division that employed 75 people and accounted for 20% of our growth last year. I stared at the document in disbelief, my coffee growing cold beside me. The division wasn't just profitable, it represented everything our company stood for. Personal service, quality craftsmanship, relationships built on trust. And Nancy planned to eliminate it entirely, without even discussing it with me first. That was when I first felt that twist in my stomach, that uneasy sense that my sister's vision for our family business was nothing like mine, nothing like Dad's. I printed the document and slid it into my drawer, unsure of what to do next. Later that night, As I drove home past houses where many of our employees lived, I wondered how many of them would soon receive pink slips, courtesy of the Patterson family. Over the next few weeks, I tried maintaining some semblance of normalcy. Each morning, I greeted employees by name as I walked through the production floor. Each afternoon, I met with department heads to discuss ongoing projects. And each evening, I called Dad to give him updates that carefully omitted my growing concerns. Nancy wasted no time asserting her authority. She hired a team of efficiency consultants who roamed the facilities with clipboards and stopwatches, making workers nervous. When I pointed out that our strength had always been quality, not speed, she dismissed me with a wave. The market has changed, Kitty. Dad's approach is outdated. We need to focus on volume and margin now. It was the first time either of us had suggested Dad's methods were anything less than perfect, and the words hung between us like an accusation. The transformation of his office particularly bothered me. Gone were the worn leather chairs where he'd sat with employees to discuss their ideas. Gone was the wall of photos showing company picnics and service anniversaries. In their place stood sleek furniture that looked like it belonged in a Manhattan high-rise, not a Wisconsin manufacturing company. What happened to Dad's desk? I asked one day, noticing the antique oak piece that had been with him for 40 years was missing. In storage, Nancy replied without looking up from her computer. It was inefficient use of space. That desk had been where Dad signed my first paycheck, where he'd helped countless employees with personal problems, where he'd taught both of us that business was ultimately about people, not products. One Tuesday, Jerry from maintenance approached me in the hallway, hat in hand. He'd been with the company for 27 years, since before I was even born. "Miss Kitty, what's this about outsourcing the maintenance department?" My crew's worried. It was the first I'd heard of it. "Let me look into it, Jerry," I promised, feeling my face flush with embarrassment. I should have known about a decision that affected people who had been loyal to our family for decades. When I confronted Nancy, she barely looked up from her lunch. "The consultants recommended it. We can save 30% on maintenance costs. But these are people who've been with us forever, who came to Dad's birthday parties, who helped us through production crunches." She sighed, finally meeting my eyes. "This is exactly why Dad needed to put one person in charge, Kitty. You're too sentimental. Business isn't personal. In a family company, it's both," I countered. "Well, I'm running this family company now," she snapped, then softened slightly. "Look, changes are necessary. Trust me, I have a vision for Patterson's future that will benefit everyone in the long run." I wanted to believe her. I really did. That evening, while finishing paperwork after hours, I noticed Nancy had left her tablet in the conference room. As I picked it up to return it to her office, a calendar notification popped up. "Meeting with Yamamoto Global Executive Team, third discussion." I froze. Yamamoto Global was a Japanese conglomerate known for acquiring American manufacturers, stripping them down, and moving production overseas. They'd done it to 3 companies in our state alone over the past decade. Why was Nancy meeting with them? And why was this the 3rd meeting? My first instinct was to call Dad, but his doctor had been clear. No stress. Instead, I placed the tablet on Nancy's desk and left for the night, a new worry gnawing at me. The next morning, I arrived early and searched through the digital archives, looking at meeting minutes from before Dad's heart attack. There, buried in files from 6 months ago, I found it. Nancy had initiated contact with Yamamoto representatives even before Dad stepped down. This wasn't a new development. It had been in motion for months. That evening, I stayed late again, waiting until the cleaning crew had gone through. Using my administrative access, I checked Nancy's company email. I told myself it was for the good of the company, for Dad's legacy, but I still felt like a thief as I typed her password. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Not only had Nancy been negotiating with Yamamoto, but she was in the final stages of selling Patterson Manufacturing entirely. The email thread revealed talks of an expedited timeline and post-acquisition management structure. One line in particular made my blood run cold. "We anticipate minimal retention of current personnel, allowing for significant operational savings. 300 jobs. Dad's 40-year legacy. Our family name on the building? All of it would be gone." replaced by another anonymous subsidiary of a foreign corporation. I printed the most damning emails and slipped them into my purse, hands shaking. On my drive home, I passed the same houses I always did, now seeing them differently. Behind those doors were families who depended on Patterson Manufacturing, people who trusted our family. And my sister was betraying all of them. For the first time since Dad's heart attack, I cried. Not delicate tears, but ugly, heaving sobs that fogged my windshield and forced me to pull over. When I finally calmed down enough to drive, one thought kept repeating in my mind. I couldn't let this happen. I wouldn't let this happen. The next morning, I arrived with puffy eyes but renewed determination. Nancy was in her office, door closed, on yet another mysterious call. I waited until she emerged, then asked for a word. I'm running late for a meeting, she said, brushing past me. It's important, Nancy. It's about Yamamoto Global. She froze mid-stride, then turned slowly. The look on her face confirmed everything. My office. Now. Once inside, she closed the door and leaned against her desk, arms crossed. You've been snooping through my things. You've been selling our family company behind everyone's backs, I countered. How long have these negotiations been going on? 6 months? Longer? It's a strategic partnership discussion, not a sale, she replied smoothly. And frankly, it's above your pay grade. Don't lie to me. I saw the emails about minimal retention and expedited closing. You're selling Patterson Manufacturing and throwing 300 people out of work. I'm securing the company's future, she hissed, dropping the pretense. Dad built a nice regional business, but it's unsustainable in today's global market. Yamamoto offers resources and scale we can't match. And what happens to the employees? To the town? To Dad's legacy? Business evolves, Kitty. Did blacksmiths cry when automobiles were invented? This is the natural progression. I stared at my sister, wondering when she'd become this person. Or had she always been this way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it? Dad would never agree to this, I said finally. Something flickered across her face. Not guilt exactly, but hesitation. Dad isn't CEO anymore. I am. And I'm making the hard decisions he was too sentimental to make. I'm going to fight this, Nancy. I won't let you destroy everything he built. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. With what authority? I'm the CEO. The board trusts me. And you're just the little sister who never bothered to get an MBA. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and straightened. We're done here. I have an actual business to run. As I left her office, my phone rang. It was the hospital. Dad had suffered another heart attack. The next hours passed in a blur. I sat in the cardiac care waiting room, alternating between pacing and making desperate calls. Dad was in critical condition but stable. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but warned that this second attack had weakened him significantly. He asked for both of you, the nurse told us when Nancy finally arrived, 3 hours after my call. But he's sleeping now. It's better not to wake him. Nancy nodded, checked her watch, and mumbled something about important calls before disappearing again. I stayed all night in the uncomfortable hospital chair, watching Dad's chest rise and fall. The next morning, Nancy implemented a series of rapid changes at the company. My team was reassigned to different departments. My access to certain systems was restricted for security purposes. My longtime assistant was transferred to human resources. I knew what she was doing, isolating me before delivering the final blow, but I wouldn't go quietly. I started documenting everything, saving emails, taking notes after conversations. And I reached out to one person I knew would help, Jack Williams, our company's longtime attorney and Dad's best friend. We met at a diner 20 miles from town to avoid being seen. Jack, in his 70s now but sharp as ever, listened gravely as I laid out everything I'd discovered. Nancy's always been ambitious, he said finally, but selling the company outright, without discussing it with your father, that doesn't add up. There has to be more to it, I agreed. Something we're missing. I joined the company right after college, eager to be part of something meaningful. Some might call it nepotism, but I worked twice as hard as anyone else to prove I deserved my place. For 15 years, I poured my heart and soul into innovating our product line, building relationships with clients who became friends, and making sure our employees felt valued. Dad always said people were the foundation of our success, not profit margins. That night, I visited Dad again. He was awake but weak, his once booming voice now barely audible. "The company?" he asked immediately. "Everything's fine, Dad," I lied, hating myself for it but knowing the truth might kill him. "Nancy's handling things." He nodded, seeming relieved. "She stopped by earlier. Said things are going better than expected." I forced a smile. "Get some rest. We need you back at the helm sooner rather than later." As I was leaving, I heard voices from the hallway. Nancy was speaking to Dad's doctor just outside the door. I stepped back, listening. "His condition is fragile but improving," the doctor was saying. "However, any significant stress could trigger another episode. I'd recommend keeping any business concerns away from him for at least 6 to 8 weeks." "Of course," Nancy replied smoothly. "His health is our only concern right now." Jack promised to look into the company bylaws and any other legal avenues we might pursue. Before we parted, he revealed something else. Nancy's been making some unusual personal financial moves lately. Taking out loans, liquidating assets. I didn't think much of it at first, but now I'm wondering if there's a connection. I slipped into the bathroom to avoid being seen, waiting until I heard them both leave. As I washed my hands, my phone buzzed with an email from Jack. The subject line made my heart skip. Urgent finding. As I drove home, pieces started falling into place. Nancy's desperation to sell wasn't just business strategy, it was personal financial need. Whatever hole she'd dug herself into, she needed the Yamamoto deal to fill it. The next day, I visited Dad again, bringing his favorite books and some company updates I'd carefully sanitized. As I approached his room, I heard Nancy's voice. "I promise you, Dad, the company will stay in the family forever. That's your legacy, and I would never jeopardize it." I stood frozen outside the door, her lie hanging in the air between us. Because at that exact moment, my phone buzzed with another message from Jack. Confirmed. Final sale meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. Board members being told it's a partnership announcement only. Yamamoto executives flying in tonight. The next morning dawned clear and cold, a perfect Wisconsin autumn day. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, a navy suit I reserved for important client meetings. Today would be the most important performance of my life, and I needed to look the part. I arrived early to help set up the boardroom as I always did for major meetings. Nancy raised an eyebrow when she saw me arranging water pitchers and notepads. "You didn't need to come in today," she said, her tone falsely sympathetic. "I was going to call you about your severance package later." I wanted to be professional. I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Besides, someone needs to make sure everything's perfect for your big announcement." Confusion flickered across her face, quickly replaced by suspicion. "What do you mean?" "The Yamamoto partnership, of course. Exciting stuff." She studied me for a moment, then nodded stiffly. "Yes, very exciting for the company's future. I even ordered those fancy pastries the board likes," I added, gesturing to the spread on the side table. "Figured it was my parting gift." Nancy seemed unsettled by my cheerfulness, but had no time to dwell on it as board members began arriving. I greeted each one warmly, noting which ones avoided my eyes. They knew what was coming, both for me and for the company, yet none had the courage to warn me. At 9:30 sharp, the Yamamoto executives arrived. 3 Japanese businessmen in impeccable suits, accompanied by their American legal counsel. Nancy introduced them with practiced pronunciation and excessive deference. I shook their hands politely, playing my part in this corporate theater. "Kitty has been an integral part of Patterson Manufacturing's history," Nancy told them, her voice dripping with insincerity, "though today marks a transition for her." The lead executive, Mr. Tanaka, bowed slightly. "Family businesses have unique challenges," he said diplomatically. "We understand the complexities." Once everyone was seated, Nancy called the meeting to order. I sat in my usual spot, notepad ready, the model of professional composure despite knowing what was coming. Before we begin our main agenda item, Nancy announced, I have an organizational change to address. She clicked her remote, and a PowerPoint slide appeared showing a restructured organizational chart. My name was conspicuously absent. As we evolve Patterson Manufacturing for future growth, we're streamlining our executive structure, she continued. The role of Vice President of Product Development has been evaluated, and we've determined it no longer aligns with our strategic direction. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. One, Martha Daniels, our longest-serving member, stared intently at her coffee cup. Kitty, Nancy said, turning to me directly, her voice now formal and cold. Your services are no longer required. I've had HR prepare your severance package, which I believe is quite generous given the circumstances. Please clear your office by tomorrow. The room fell silent. This was the moment that had played out in my nightmares for weeks. The public humiliation, the professional execution, the final triumph of my sister's vision over mine, over Dad's. I should have felt devastated, angry, betrayed. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I started laughing. Not nervously or hysterically, but genuinely, like I'd just heard the funniest joke. Is something amusing, Kitty? Nancy asked, her professional mask slipping to reveal irritation. I composed myself with effort. I'm sorry. It's just so predictable. Thank you for the opportunity to have served Patterson Manufacturing. I wish you all the best with your future endeavors. The corporate platitudes rolled off my tongue with practiced ease. Nancy seemed thrown by my reaction but recovered quickly. Well, that's settled then. She clicked to the next slide. Now, I'm excited to announce that tomorrow marks an exciting new chapter for Patterson Manufacturing. As she launched into her carefully rehearsed speech about strategic global partnerships and synergistic opportunities, I gathered my belongings and stood. Nancy paused, clearly expecting some final outburst. Instead, I smiled pleasantly at everyone, nodded respectfully to the Yamamoto executives, and walked calmly to the door. Just before exiting, I turned back. Nancy, just one question. Does Dad know about tomorrow's exciting announcement? Her face paled slightly. That's not appropriate for discussion here. You're right. Family matters should stay in the family. Good luck, everyone. With that, I left the boardroom, feeling the weight of 20 eyes on my back. In the hallway, Jack Williams was waiting by the elevator, his expression grim but determined. How'd it go in there? He asked quietly. Exactly as expected. She fired me in front of everyone. And you're laughing about it? I shrugged. Sometimes it's either laugh or cry. I chose the former. The elevator arrived, and as we stepped inside, Jack slipped a thick folder into my hands. Everything you need is here. Bylaws, founding documents, financial records. She violated at least 3 major provisions by negotiating this sale without proper approval. I flipped through the papers quickly, my heart racing as I absorbed the implications. This is exactly what we need. There's more, Jack added, as the elevator descended. Those loans Nancy took out? I found out what they were for. Gambling debts. Atlantic City and Las Vegas. She's been hiding a serious problem for years. The pieces clicked together in my mind like a puzzle finally completing itself. So that's why she needs this sale to go through. She's desperate for the payout. Exactly. And she's been embezzling from the company to cover it up. Small amounts at first, but increasingly larger sums disguised as consulting fees to shell companies. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped into the lobby. What she did to you today was awful, Jack said. But in a strange way, it might be the best thing that could have happened. It freed you to fight back without divided loyalties. I nodded, clutching the folder to my chest. And fight back I will. Tomorrow morning will definitely be interesting. What's your plan? Jack asked as we walked toward the parking lot. I smiled, feeling truly confident for the first time in months. First, I'm going to empty my office, then I'm going to make some calls. And then, Jack, I'm going to save my family's company. As we reached our cars, Jack squeezed my shoulder. Your father would be proud, Kitty. He always said you had the heart of the business. Let's hope I have enough of his business mind too, I replied, because tomorrow will require both. I watched Jack drive away, then looked up at the Patterson manufacturing sign that had stood above our town for 4 decades. My father's name. My name. I wouldn't let it disappear without a fight. I spent the night in my office, sorting through 15 years of memories while simultaneously plotting my next moves. Each photo I packed reminded me of what was at stake. The ribbon cutting when we opened the custom manufacturing division, the company softball team hoisting their championship trophy, Dad beaming with pride at our 30th anniversary celebration. Around midnight, my phone rang. Nancy's name flashed on the screen. I considered ignoring it, but decided it might reveal something useful. A bit late for a professional call, I answered. What are you planning, Kitty? Her voice was tense, stripped of its usual corporate polish. Planning? I'm just clearing out my office as instructed. Don't play games. Your reaction in the meeting today wasn't normal. You're up to something. I placed another framed photo in a box, this one of Dad and me on my first day at the company. Nancy, you won. You're selling the company tomorrow, pocketing millions, and walking away from everything Dad built. What could I possibly do about it now? Stay away from what doesn't concern you, she warned. The deal is done. The papers are drawn up. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Harder for whom, Nancy? The 300 employees losing their jobs? Dad, who trusted you to protect his legacy? Or just harder for you? You don't understand the complexities of running a business this size in today's economy, she snapped. Sentiment doesn't pay the bills. No, but integrity used to mean something in this family. Good night, Nancy. I hung up before she could respond and returned to my task with renewed purpose. Her call confirmed what I suspected. She was nervous. She knew her plan had vulnerabilities. Around 2 a.m, I finished with my office and moved to Phase 2. I called Martha Daniels, waking her from sleep. Kitty, is everything all right? Her voice was groggy with confusion. I need to see you, Martha. It's about tomorrow's board meeting. There was a pause, then a sigh. I had a feeling this was coming. My house, 30 minutes. Next, I called 3 other board members I suspected might be sympathetic to my cause. 2 agreed to meet me at Martha's. The third declined, but sounded troubled enough that I knew he was wavering. Before heading to Martha's, I made one more call, to my contact at Remington Industrial, Yamamoto's biggest American competitor. We'd had preliminary discussions weeks ago when I first suspected Nancy's plan, but now it was time to formalize things. I know it's late, Sam, I said when he answered. But if you're serious about a counter-offer, I need it by 6 a.m., one that preserves jobs and operations here in Wisconsin. You sure about this, Kitty? Going against your own sister? I'm sure about saving 300 jobs and my father's legacy. Can you have the offer ready? For Patterson Manufacturing? Absolutely. I'll call our legal team now. At Martha's house, I laid out everything for the board members. The violations of company bylaws, Nancy's gambling problems, and financial misconduct. The true nature of the Yamamoto deal, which would strip the company bare within a year. She lied to all of us, Martha said finally, examining the documents Jack had provided. She said this was a minority investment, not a complete sale and dissolution. I suspected as much, said Tom Bradley, another longtime board member. But she had all these projections showing declining market share if we didn't act. Fabricated projections, I pointed out. Our market position is stronger than ever thanks to the custom division she wants to eliminate. By 4 a.m., I had secured tentative support from all 3 board members, conditional on one crucial element. Dad needed to be involved. Despite his health concerns, they wouldn't move against Nancy without his explicit approval. He deserves to know what's happening to his company, Martha insisted. Even if it's difficult. I agreed, though the thought of adding stress to his recovery terrified me. There was one more person I needed to consult before approaching Dad. Dr. Sharma, his cardiologist, was just starting her rounds when I reached the hospital at 5:30. She frowned when I explained the situation. Ideally, Mr. Patterson should avoid all stress for at least another month, she said. However, I understand the urgency of the situation. If we monitor him closely and keep the interaction brief, It may be acceptable. His condition has stabilized significantly over the past few days. With the doctor's cautious approval, I entered Dad's room just as dawn was breaking. He was awake, looking stronger than he had in days. "Kitty, what are you doing here so early?" he asked, his voice still weak but clearer than before. I took his hand, choosing my words carefully. "Dad, there's something happening at the company that you need to know about. It's serious, and it can't wait." He studied my face, then nodded slowly. "Nancy's selling to Yamamoto, isn't she?" I couldn't hide my shock. "You knew?" "Suspected," he corrected. "She's been avoiding my questions, giving vague answers. And I may be old, but I still read the business journals. Yamamoto's acquisition pattern is well documented." "She fired me yesterday," I admitted, "in front of the entire board and the Yamamoto executives. The sale is scheduled to close this morning." Dad closed his eyes briefly, pain crossing his face that had nothing to do with his heart condition. "I never thought she would go this far. Not with family." "There's more, Dad. Nancy has a gambling problem. She's in debt for millions, and she's been embezzling from the company. The sale is her way out." He absorbed this information silently, the heart monitor beside him beeping slightly faster. I worried I'd made a terrible mistake in telling him, but he deserved the truth. "Can it be stopped?" he asked finally. "Yes. There's a clause in the founding documents requiring all family members to approve any sale. She can't do it without our consent. And I have a counteroffer from Remington that would keep operations and jobs here." Dad nodded, a familiar determination returning to his eyes. "Then we stop it. Together." "Dad, your health. Some things are worth the risk, Kitty. My company, my employees, my family's honor." He struggled to sit up straighter. "Help me get dressed. It's time to remind everyone whose name is on the building." 7:30 a.m. Patterson Manufacturing's main entrance was busier than usual for a Tuesday morning. Yamamoto executives arrived in a convoy of Blacktown cars, looking confident and relaxed. Board members filtered in one by one, nodding politely to each other while avoiding substantive conversation. And Nancy stood at the lobby entrance, elegant in a designer suit, greeting everyone like a conductor preparing for her finest symphony. She frowned when she saw me walk through the door. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, pulling me aside. "Your access has been revoked." "Strange. My keycard still worked," I replied calmly. "Perhaps there was an oversight in the termination process." "This is inappropriate and unprofessional," she continued, glancing nervously at the Yamamoto executives who were watching our interaction with interest. "Security will escort you out." "Before you do that," I said, loud enough for others to hear, "you might want to read this." I handed her a legal document with the company seal. Nancy scanned it quickly, her face draining of color. "This is irrelevant. The board has already approved the sale." "Under false pretenses," I countered. "They approved a strategic partnership, not a complete sale and dissolution. And this document clearly states that any change in company ownership requires unanimous consent of all Patterson family members." Mr. Tanaka approached us, his expression curious. "Is there a problem with our transaction, Miss Patterson?" Nancy forced a smile. "No problem at all. Just a small family matter that won't affect our timeline. Shall we proceed to the boardroom?" I followed them to the elevator, Nancy shooting daggers at me with her eyes. As the doors closed, I texted Jack. "We're heading up. Everyone in position?" His reply came immediately. "Ready and waiting. Good luck." When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, Nancy strode confidently toward the boardroom, the Yamamoto team in her wake. She pushed open the double doors, then froze at the threshold. Instead of an empty room ready for her triumphant closing, the boardroom was full. Every board member was already seated. Jack Williams stood at the head of the table with legal documents spread before him. And 3 unfamiliar men in suits sat together on one side, watching the proceedings with professional interest. "What is this?" Nancy demanded, her voice rising. "The meeting isn't scheduled until 8. "We called an emergency session," Martha explained. "Please take a seat. We have important matters to discuss before any other business can proceed." The next morning, Nancy implemented a series of rapid changes at the company. My team was reassigned to different departments. My access to certain systems was restricted for security purposes. My longtime assistant was transferred to human resources. Mr. Tanaka nodded, though his expression had grown wary. Of course, we will wait outside. Once they left, Nancy turned on the board members, her professional veneer cracking. What do you think you're doing? We have a deal ready to close that will secure this company's future. Nancy glanced at the Yamamoto executives, clearly unsure how to handle this unexpected development. Gentlemen, if you'll excuse us for a few moments, it seems we need to address an internal matter first. Business conditions changed, Nancy countered smoothly. The final terms reflect market realities. And what about the reality of your gambling debts? I asked quietly. Are those market conditions too? The room fell silent. Nancy stared at me with naked hatred. You have no idea what you're talking about. Jack cleared his throat. Actually, we have comprehensive documentation of loans totaling $2.4 million taken to cover gambling losses, plus evidence of company funds diverted to shell corporations you control. This is slander, Nancy hissed. I'll sue all of you. It's not slander if it's true, came a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Dad stood there in a wheelchair, still pale but radiating the authority that had built Patterson Manufacturing from nothing. Dr. Sharma stood behind him, monitoring him closely. Dad, Nancy gasped. You shouldn't be here. Your heart. My heart is breaking, Nancy, but not from medical reasons. He wheeled himself to the table, positioning between Nancy and me. When your mother died, I promised her I'd leave both my daughters something meaningful. Not just money, but purpose. Legacy. I thought I'd done that with this company. Nancy's composure cracked further. I was protecting your legacy, making necessary changes for survival. By selling everything I built? By firing your sister? By lying to my face in my hospital room? Dad's voice remained calm, but his disappointment cut through the room like a physical force. Tell me about the gambling, Nancy. She collapsed into a chair, the fight suddenly gone from her. It started small. Weekend trips to Vegas. A way to relax from the pressure. Then it got complicated. $2 million complicated, Jack noted. I was going to pay it all back, she insisted. The sale includes retention bonuses, enough to cover everything and start fresh. While 300 people lose their jobs, I pointed out. While Dad's name gets stripped off the building he mortgaged our childhood home to construct. Dad reached out, taking both our hands in his. Nancy, I failed you. I should have seen the signs, helped you before it came to this. For the first time, tears appeared in Nancy's eyes. You didn't fail me. I failed you. All of you. She looked around the room at the board members, people who had known her since childhood. I just wanted to fix it myself before anyone found out how badly I'd messed up. By betraying everything this company stands for? Martha asked gently. Nancy nodded, finally breaking down. I didn't see another way out. There's always another way, Dad said firmly. But first, we need to address the immediate situation. He turned to the three men I hadn't recognized. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice. One man stood, extending his hand to Nancy. Thomas Reynolds, Remington Industrial. We've prepared an alternative proposal for Patterson Manufacturing that preserves its operations and workforce. You went to our competitors? Nancy asked me incredulously. I went to someone who values what we've built, I corrected. Their offer includes funds for expansion of the custom division, not elimination. And management? Nancy asked, her voice small. That, Dad said firmly, will be a family decision. But first, we need to deal with our visitors. He nodded to Jack, who went to invite the Yamamoto executives back in. They entered cautiously, clearly sensing the changed dynamics. Mr. Tanaka, Dad began. I apologize for the confusion today. I'm William Patterson, founder of this company. Mr. Tanaka bowed respectfully. Mr. Patterson, your reputation precedes you. We were informed you were no longer active in the business. Recent developments have necessitated my temporary return, Dad explained diplomatically. After careful consideration of all factors, our board has decided not to proceed with the proposed acquisition. Mr. Tanaka's expression revealed nothing, but the junior executives exchanged glances. May I ask what prompted this sudden reversal? Let's just say we've discovered that our family business should remain exactly that, a family business, Dad replied. I hope you understand it's nothing personal. After a tense moment, Mr. Tanaka nodded. Family considerations are always paramount. We respect your decision, though we are naturally disappointed. The Japanese team gathered their materials with practiced efficiency. As they prepared to leave, Mr. Tanaka paused beside Nancy. I hope your family finds its way through this challenge. In Japan, we say, after the rain, the earth hardens. Perhaps this difficulty will strengthen your foundations. When they had gone, Dad called the board to order. We have several urgent matters to address. First, Nancy's position as CEO. Nancy stood shakily. I'll resign immediately. It's the only appropriate action after what I've done. Second, Dad continued as if she hadn't spoken, the Remington offer, which appears promising but requires thorough evaluation. And third, I added, Nancy's personal financial situation, which impacts the company through her actions. Dad looked around the room gravely. I move that we table all three issues until we've had time for proper consideration. This morning has been dramatic enough, and rushed decisions rarely serve anyone well. Martha seconded the motion immediately, and the vote was unanimous. As the meeting adjourned, board members filed out quietly, the enormity of what had nearly happened settling over everyone. When only family remained, Nancy finally met my eyes directly. Why didn't you let them fire me on the spot? You had every reason to want revenge. Because we're family, I said simply. And family is supposed to help each other through the hard times, not just the easy ones. Dad squeezed both our hands. We have a long road ahead of us, girls, but we'll walk it together, just like we always should have. 6 months can change everything. The trees outside my office window that were bare on that fateful morning are now heavy with summer leaves. Patterson Manufacturing hums with activity, the production floor busy with both standard and custom orders. And our family, fractured and nearly broken beyond repair, has begun the slow, sometimes painful process of healing. The emergency board meeting that day resulted in several significant changes. Dad temporarily resumed his role as chairman, though day-to-day operations were handed to a professional management team, with family maintaining oversight through board positions. This compromise protected both the business interests and the company values Dad had always prioritized. Nancy was removed as CEO, but not expelled from the company entirely. Instead, she was given a path to redemption, addiction treatment, financial restitution, and a reduced role focused on her actual strengths in financial analysis rather than executive leadership. It's what your mother would have wanted, Dad told me when I questioned whether we were being too lenient. She always believed people deserve second chances if they're willing to work for them. Nancy's recovery hasn't been easy. The gambling addiction had deeper roots than any of us realized, stretching back to her college years. The pressure she felt as the eldest child, expected to follow in Dad's footsteps, had pushed her towards self-destructive coping mechanisms that spiraled out of control. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps explain it. I didn't take over as CEO either, despite what many expected. Truth be told, I never wanted that role. My passion remained product development and employee relations. Instead, we hired Diane Walters, a respected industry veteran with a philosophy aligned with our family values. She brought fresh perspectives while respecting our traditions, the perfect balance we needed. The Remington deal proved beneficial in unexpected ways. Rather than an acquisition, it evolved into a strategic alliance that expanded our market reach while preserving our independence. The injection of capital allowed us to modernize equipment and expand the custom division, creating 30 new jobs in addition to preserving the existing 300. Dad's health improved steadily, though he never returned to full-time work. Instead, he found a new purpose mentoring young entrepreneurs in our community, sharing the wisdom of his 40 years in business. I should have done this years ago, he told me recently. Teaching others makes you examine your own assumptions in new ways. As for Nancy and me, our relationship will never be what it was before. Too much happened, too many painful words were exchanged, but we're finding a new equilibrium based on honesty rather than competition. Weekly therapy sessions, both individual and together, have helped us understand patterns established in childhood that led us to this breaking point. I was always jealous of how easily you connected with people, Nancy admitted, during one particularly difficult session. How Dad's employees loved you, while they respected but feared me. And I envied your business acumen, I confessed. The way you could analyze a spreadsheet and see opportunities I missed. Slowly, we're learning to see our differences as complementary strengths rather than points of comparison. Nancy now heads a specialized finance team, where her analytical abilities serve the company without the pressures of executive leadership. I continue leading product development with a renewed focus on innovation. Yesterday marked a significant milestone in our healing process. Nancy and I presented our first joint project to the board, a new approach to the custom manufacturing division that combines her financial discipline with my customer relationship focus. The board approved it unanimously. Your father would be proud, Martha told us afterward, her eyes misty. This is what he always envisioned for Patterson Manufacturing. Both his daughters working together, each contributing their unique gifts. Last night, I found myself alone in the office late, reviewing some production notes. Nancy appeared in my doorway, hesitating before entering. "Working late again?" she asked, her tone lighter than it would have been 6 months ago. "Just wrapping up." "You?" "Same." She sat in the chair across from my desk, the same position we'd been in countless times before, though usually with tension rather than tentative warmth. "Do you ever think about that day? When you walked into the boardroom and stopped the sale?" I nodded. "Sometimes. Mostly I think about how close we came to losing everything. Not just the company, but our relationship, Dad's legacy." "I've never properly thanked you," she said quietly, "for not doing to me what I did to you, for giving me another chance when you had every reason not to." "That's what family does," I replied simply. "At least it's what our family does now." She smiled, a genuine expression I'd seen too rarely in recent years. "Want to grab dinner? I heard that new place downtown is good." "I'd like that." As we walked out together, I glanced at the portraits in the hallway, generations of Pattersons who had contributed to the company's journey. Dad's was the most prominent, his expression kind but determined, the same look he'd had when he stopped Nancy's sale. Our family business continues, changed but stronger for having weathered this storm. The name on the building remains Patterson, a legacy preserved not just through business success, but through the harder work of forgiveness, understanding, and second chances. I realize now that what I couldn't stop laughing about that day in the boardroom wasn't just the irony of my sister's betrayal. It was the realization that she had severely underestimated what our father had taught me, that business is ultimately about people, not profits, about integrity, not expediency, about family, in all its complicated, messy, but ultimately redemptive reality. Have you ever had to choose between getting even and making things right? Between justice and mercy? It's rarely an easy decision, especially when family is involved. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about family, business, and the challenges we face together. Share this with someone who might be struggling with family conflict, and remember that even in our darkest moments, reconciliation is possible if we're willing to work for it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you wisdom and courage in your own family journey.